Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Santa's Secret, and I'm sipping on some hot cocoa. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you can find additional painting perks. So let's get painting, and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, Mars black, fire red, deep yellow, cobalt blue, and burnt umber, which I like to call brown. And you can certainly switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a 1/4 inch flat bristle brush. And I also have a number 3 round synthetic brush. I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course, you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a few additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you could download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our Santa. I'm going to be using my pencil. I will be guiding you through a series of markers or dots, and we're going to connect the dots. But what I like to do when I'm doing paintings such as this, and I want they're kind of on the more complicated side, what I like to do first is I like to block in my colors, which means I'm going to separate my complicated painting into very simplified sections of color, and then I will build all of my detail on top of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a basic outline for the largest sections of our Santa Claus, and then we'll block those colors in, and then we'll build details around them. So we'll have the hand, we're going to have the hat, and a basic shape for the head and the beard, and we'll go from there. So we're going to start with doing an outline for the hand, and the hand is giving a shh kind of motion. So I'm going to find myself the center of my canvas, left to right, top to bottom. So for me, that's right about here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down about an inch and to the right about an inch. That's going to give me the tippy top of the pointer finger right in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my center of my canvas, and I'm going to come directly down to the bottom of my canvas and come to the left of that about an inch. Something right about here will give me this marker. And then I'm going to go back to the center of the bottom of my canvas. I'm going to go about halfway between that and the edge of my canvas over here. So this is going to give me a marker that it's about 1/4 of the way over my canvas. I'm going to first connect this dot to this dot, which is going to be the outside of the pointer finger in through here. So I'm going to take this. I'm not going to do a straight line. I'm going to bring this in a little bit of a curve like this, and then kind of come down, straight down for a little while, and then just bump it out a little bit. What I'm looking to do is give myself a nice kind of organic type of line, maybe that shows a little bit of that back side of the finger. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the right of here, just a little smudge somewhere in through there. I'm going to find myself about the halfway mark between here and here. So that's going to be right about here, and I'm going to come up about an inch, inch and a half. I'm going to connect these 3 dots with a kind of an organic type of arcing type of line. That's going to represent like the next finger over that's kind of curved down. I'm going to put the thumb on now, so I'm going to come up a little bit from this, maybe about half of an inch, quarter of an inch, half of an inch, and then I'm going to come to the left of that, maybe about 1.5 inches, something like that. And then I'm going to bring this out like this. So this comes a little bit to the right of this bottom marker in here. Not much, just a smudge to the right. And then just kind of, this will be the back part of the little thumb sticking out. Then I'm going to go about 1 inch, 1.5 inches to the left of here. So somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to connect this marker to up and through here. So this will be the rest of the pointer finger. So I'm going to just bring this down in a little bit of a curve. And he's got gloves on, so this doesn't have to be anatomically correct. You can make his gloves fluffier, so if it's not, if you don't see knuckles and stuff like that, don't worry. He's got his white gloves on, so that works for that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come about 1 inch above here and give myself another marker. This is going to be the top part of the mustache, somewhere in through there. I'm going to then travel straight up from here until I'm about 1 inch, 1.5 inches away from the top of my canvas, somewhere in through here. I'm going to come back to about the center of these two, so about halfway between here and here, which is about here. I'm going to go over to the right until I would say I'm about 3 inches from the edge of my canvas. It's going to be the side of his face. And then I'm going to come over to the left till I'm maybe about 5 inches away from the edge of the canvas here. So about 1/4 of the way over, somewhere in there. We just gave Santa a barrier from his hat is going to be up here. This is going to be his forehead. This is going to be his mustache. These are going to be kind of to the right of his eyes. So this is going to be a big oval type of a shape for his face. What I'm going to do for my mustache is I'm going to kind of come over, I'm going to give a little kind of upward little mark in through here, and I'm going to drop this down. This is going to almost be around his cheeks. I'm going to come up and meet my marker up in through here. So I'll do the same thing on the other side, just so I don't get lost in the process. So I just kind of dipped it down just a little bit, came up to my marker in through here. Now I'm going to come up just a little bit in through here and then just start curving it up into that marker. And I can do the same thing here, kind of just bring it up just a little bit more in through there and then start curving it. And they don't have to be perfect from one side to the other. The hat's going to be a little tipped. Mine are not the same exact from one side to the other, just something that gives you those cute cheeks and enough distance to the top of the hat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the fluffy white part on the top of my hat. So I'm going to go right about where these little curves started in through here. Give myself a little bit of a marker in through there and a little bit of a marker in through here. I'm going to go up to the top right hand corner of my canvas and come in about 1/2 inch. This is going to be, I'm going to connect here to here. This is going to be one side of my hat in through there. And then I'm going to come up from here just so you can have kind of a good marker, kind of come up from here, and then to the left of that about 2 inches. Give myself a marker. These two will be connected now with another kind of curvy line like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this pointer finger and put on a real generic shape for his mouth. So I'm going to come down about 1 inch on either side, give myself a marker there, and then come down maybe about another 1 inch, 1.5 inches, another marker in through there, and then split the difference between the two and come out about 1.5 inches on either side, and then just connect these. So this is going to give you a real generic shape for the mouth. We're just going to be putting kind of the illusion of his skin color in through there, so you don't need to have that very perfect. I'm going to put an outline for his hair / beard now. So I'm going to go to the left of here, just maybe about 1/2 inch or so. And I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom of my canvas at about the same distance, maybe a little bit to the left of that marker of what I did up here. And then I'm just going to connect these with a real long, just kind of wavy type of a line. I'm going to do a similar exercise on the right hand side. I'm going to come over here about 1 inch, 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and then come down to the bottom of my canvas at almost the same distance. It could be, mine I think is going to be somewhere in this vicinity. And then again, just kind of connect these two with a long wavy line. So the next thing that I'm going to put on is the rest of his hat. So he's going to have, this is going to be a white fluffy part of the hat. I'm going to have a red part of the hat kind of draping down with a big pom-pom at the end. So I'm going to have my pom-pom somewhere in this vicinity. So I'm just going to kind of maybe go to the left of where I have that mouth, give myself a little marker, and I'm just going to really give myself just kind of a wavy type of ball type of shape in through there. I'm going to go about halfway between here and here, give myself a marker at the top of that ball, and then up at the top here, I'm going to go to the left of here about an inch, and then connect these two markers, something like that. Then what I'm going to do is he's going to have a fluffy part on the outside, or the collar of his Santa jacket. So I'm just going to give myself a little sliver of a section in through here. This is going to be his red jacket, and this will be his fluffy collar part of the jacket. And then I'm just going to make a couple of little lines on this side to do the same thing. He's going to, where it separates the collar, I'm going to have a collar up here and then a little red section down here. So I'm just going to come down from here, maybe about an inch, inch and a half, give myself a little line, curved line that goes to the edge of my canvas. So think of this as like his shoulder area. And then down at the bottom, I'm going to come up, I would say maybe about 4 or 5 inches somewhere in through here, and then just give myself a little marker in through here. So this will be the collar, and then this will be the red section. And that is all we're going to do for our outline. So you can make any little adjustments or modifications. We're going to be using our large brush for the next step. So you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat for the background, which is going to be these two little sections here, and the skin, which is going to be this large area in through here, and the mouth. Noticing now he kind of looks like he's wearing a ski mask right now. Ski goggles. So Santa's temporarily wearing a set of ski goggles. Ski goggles. But anyways, so I'm going to be painting with my large brush, but I'm going to pre-mix a custom skin color with my medium brush. So I'll demonstrate with this just so you can see how I got there. I'm going to be doing the background with black, so there's no trick there. So I have pre-mixed my skin color, which is right here. How I got to that was I used about equal parts of yellow, red, brown, and a little bit more white than those three colors. So a little bit more white, but about equal parts of the brown, red, and yellow. And then I just spin it together. So I am not going for any fancy skin color here. A lot of times what I do is I use my own skin color as reference. So I can take whatever color I've made, I can hold it up to my skin, and that looks pretty similar. So that's what I'm going to be going for. You can certainly make yours lighter or darker or more red or more brown, whatever works for you. But this is where I'm headed with my skin tone. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put away my medium brush. I'm taking out my large brush. I'm going to paint the entire facial area that we outlined with this custom skin color. I do know that I'm going to be doing a lot of additional details on top of the skin, so I don't need to do any fancy brush stroke. I'm just really looking to get that color right up to where my pencil mark is. You can even bump into your pencil mark a little bit. You can paint over it if it goes into the next section. I'm going to be showing you how to intermingle or overlap these sections anyways, especially around that beard, so it looks nice and natural. So as you're going through that area, if you overlap it, that's great. And if your pencil bleeds into your paint a little bit, that's awesome too. I am going to just kind of level out my paint so I don't have any too real thick spots that I'll have little lumps and bumps in it, so that works out well. And then I'm just going to use the little remnants on my brush to paint in this area. Again, I don't need to stay within my lines right now. I'm just getting a real basic layer on there. It's almost better if you don't stay within the lines, because that helps the transition from one area to the next, especially on a nice natural skin that we're doing in through here. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to paint the base coat for the background. So I'm choosing to do a black background because there's not much background showing behind my Santa Claus, and what I wanted to do was just kind of balance all of my colors. So I knew that I was going to have a little bit of darkness in the pupil of his eyes and a little bit of shadow in his hand, so, and various shadows throughout. So I figured that this black along these edges would balance those colors out well. So it helps to give my whole painting a nice complete look here. So I'm going to paint this one in through here and then this one over here. You could wrap these colors as you're going through the painting. You could wrap the color around the edge of the canvas so the outside edge of your canvas is fully painted as well. That would be a personal preference on your part. I tend to do it on a lot of paintings if I'm going to be selling the paintings and stuff, so it looks like it's nice and complete. Then I'm going to be, once I've got that done, I'm going to be using the same large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat for Santa's hat and jacket, his glove, and his beard. I'm going to be using my large brush to paint. The colors I'm going to use are red, brown, black, and white. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be painting part of the hat and the jacket with red, and then we're going to make two custom colors. We're going to be making a gray, which will be the base coat for our white elements, which are going to be his glove, his pom-pom, the collar, and the top part of the hat. And then we'll make a light tan color, which will be the base color for his beard. I'm going to start with the red parts that we're going to be coloring in. So I've got my large brush and I loaded it with red paint. I'm going to be painting it with a stippling or dotting technique. So I'm just taking my brush and I'm dotting these sections. And the reason why I'm dotting them is because my red is transparent and I want this to look like it's got kind of a fluffy type of a texture to it. So because it's transparent and I'm using this brush stroke, it's going to provide it with more of like a soft cloth type of appearance with some light spots and dark spots as opposed to a full-on brush stroke. This helps me just get some great texture in this type of element. And if you go into your other sections, that's fine because you're using this larger kind of bristle brush for specifically to make some texture. So you're bound to bump into your other sections. But again, the primary goal here is just to get some nice texture on here. When I go over to the black section, that's okay if I overlap that. That's actually encouraged because that's what's going to make the edge of the hat look like it's got some fluff along the edges. It will be see-through, so I'll be able to see some of that black through it right now, but when I go and put highlight and shadows on this red section, I can eliminate that see-through appearance. So once I've got that on there, just making sure I bring it all the way to my pencil, make sure I've got all the sections I want. I'm going to wash and dry this brush to use it to paint for the other sections. But before I start painting, I'm going to make two custom colors. I'm going to use my medium brush to mix those colors so you can see how I did it. So I have pre-mixed them. This is going to be my light or my gray color that'll be used for my white sections. How I got to that is just white and black. So I took white and a little bit of black and spun it together. I'm going for kind of a medium to light gray color as the base for my white objects. You could certainly go lighter or darker if you want to. This just is going to work out well for me with adding my highlights and shadows on it. And then the color for my beard, he's going to have a gray beard, but I don't want it to get confused with the white elements on his clothing. So I'm going to start with a tan type of a color, which is mostly brown and white, a lot of brown, a little bit of white, and just a touch of black. So it doesn't look necessarily brown. It's going to take on a grayish tone, but it has more brown in it in order to give it a different type of color base than the cool gray that we'll be using behind the white objects. So that's where I'm headed with that. I'm going to call that one tan, and I'm going to call this one gray, so we know which is which. So I'm going to start with my gray color, and I'm going to do my objects that are behind. I'm going to go work from mostly back forward, except for, well, I'm going to do these sections, this one and this one with my gray. I'm then going to do my beard, and then I'm going to do the hand, so that way when I do the beard I can hit it. I'll be able to overlap it with the hand. So I'm going to go ahead and do this again with that dotting or stippling type of brush stroke. It's not as necessary for this particular element because the gray does have good opacity, which means you can't really see through it, but for purposes where it meets the red or other elements, I like to have that fluffiness to it, so that's where the stippling brush stroke is going to work. These two are the same color, so I'm going to leave a little bit of white detail between those two just so I don't get confused where one meets the other. And when I get to my edges, I am overlapping those edges with the object that's next to it. So I overlapped it to the background, I overlapped it into the red, and that way, again, it's going to give it that fluffy type of element to it. And then I'm just kind of dotting that whole center section. I'm going to do the same thing with the hat. So again, just kind of dotting it all along the top of my canvas. Again, the dotting doesn't really matter in the center of that hat, but again, it matters when it's overlapping or meeting another object. I am going to do it overlapping that face a little bit. We still have lots of work to go on the skin, so the touching of these two is okay. You can, they're going to bump into each other, and as we work our way through the process of the face and the skin, if you got too much gray in the face anywhere, that's okay. We'll be able to correct that later, just kind of getting it all in this area, making sure that I've got full coverage in through there, and then again, just bringing it around this side, overlapping it into that gray a little bit, or into the background black a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this little section over in through here. So again, just loading my brush with that gray, bringing it all the way up, overlapping that black section, bringing it down in through here, coloring this all in just with my dotting technique, and then overlapping this red a little bit. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush and pick up some of my tan color. This is going to be a little bit different of a brush stroke because I want to start the process of the direction of my hair on my beard. So I picked up my tan. It is going to meet and overlap my skin, but I don't need it to overlap a lot. So I'm just going to kind of bring it in a long directional brush stroke, kind of coming down. When it meets this face, I'm really hardly touching my canvas. I'm overlapping it just a little bit into that skin color. Don't worry about doing it a lot, just a little bit in order to get the process started. I'm going to go ahead and do that over in through here. So I'm just kind of going up into that hat a little bit, and then as I am touching that skin, I'm really just almost not fully blending it in with the skin, but just getting it to touch that skin a little bit. And then I'm just bringing this down in through here, and I'm just using long directional type of brush strokes. Same thing when I'm over here with the beard. It's hard to work around this mouth in through here, so I'm going to use my directional brush stroke, but I'm okay again if I bump into certain things. So I'm going to start up in through here. I'm thinking this is the mustache, so I'm just bringing it kind of down in a curved type of a way. I'm going to again overlap this just a little bit into that skin, just a little bit in through there, and just kind of bringing it down like this. I'm okay with the streakiness that I'm going to be seeing right now, again side because we've got a lot to go. This is just starting the process, giving us our base coat. I'm bringing it right up to my finger and through here, and then as I come down here, I'm just really giving myself a nice kind of curvy type of wavy look to my brush stroke, as opposed to coming straight down. I'm really just kind of giving it some type of curve, and again, leaving some of that canvas showing through is acceptable. And again, right in through here, I'm just going to kind of tap it, bringing it in a downward type of a motion. Might cross over that lip or that mouth a little bit, which is awesome because that's what the mustache would do. And then in through here, I'm going to do the same thing. This again is kind of a area where the beard meets the mustache, so that's okay if it doesn't go on perfectly in through there. And then just bringing this in a downward type of motion here, getting this to bump into that finger. Again, this is intended to, it's okay that you bump into that hand. That's why we're painting the beard first, so it doesn't look like we're painting around the hand. Putting this on like this is going to help make it look a little bit more natural, like the beard is sitting behind that hand. And then just bringing this down in through here. And we're going to have little straggler pieces kind of out the sides, but this again is just our base coat. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put my base coat for my hand on. So washing and dry my brush. And I'm just going to pick up some of that gray color, and this time I don't need to do any specific brush stroke. I'm just giving myself a base coat on in through here and just bringing it all the way to my pencil mark, even overlapping my or touching my pencil mark, so I have good coverage. When I get to this pencil mark in through here, if you want to still have it evident, just lightly paint the gray on top of it, and you'll still be able to see that pencil. If you're using if you used a drawing utensil that you can't, that will disappear when you touch it with paint, then just leave yourself a little tiny guideline between this front finger and these back two fingers. So that'll be whatever process works for you. I can just lightly paint over mine and I can still see it. And then we are going to be using we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be establishing contours and shadows on the face. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my skin tone, brown, red, and maybe a little bit of black, but if I use that, I'll let you know. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be, in essence, kind of establishing where my nose is going to go, where my eyes are going to go, maybe where some wrinkles are going to go, and also the contours of the face, which are the cheeks, how they're going to kind of curve into the sides of the head, wrapping around like into the beard. So that'll be where there'll be more shadows. I'm going to have my light source, which is out in Never Neverland, is going to be kind of on the right side and maybe out over here. So what that's going to do is it's going to create the right side of the nose is going to be a little bit lighter. The right side of the face is going to be a little bit lighter, which will create more shadows on the left side of the nose, the left side of the face. So those are the things that we're going to do now in order to kind of build the light source, build the wrinkles. So we're going to start by establishing our contours and our shadows. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a darker skin tone, which I have, of course, magically pre-done. So this is it in through here. I didn't want to go all the way brown because we're going to be adding even more detail later. This is just to establish where we want this stuff to happen. So what I did was I took a lot of brown and I added a little bit of my skin tone and a touch of red. So what this did is just made it a little bit darker and a little bit richer of a tone than this. So it's not too pasty looking, but it's got a darker tone to it. So that may be a little bit more brown. That was a little bit too light. And of course, yours doesn't have to be exactly as mine. And of course, this is just going to start the process of the face being complete. So again, doesn't have to be anything perfect. So then what I did is I'm just going to wipe my brush off on the on my paper towel. So I hardly have any paint on my brush. I'm going to be using this to kind of sketch out what I want and where I want it. So first what I'm going to do is kind of establish where I want the bottom of my nose, which is going to be just above my mustache. So I'm going to just take this, I have very little paint on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of sketch out the bottom of the nose, something like this. I know that I'm going to want darkness underneath that nose, so I'm going to blend this darkness down towards that mustache. So very little bit of paint on my brush. I'm going to bring up these nostrils just a little bit on either side. The trick to doing a believable portrait is to not have too many harsh, clean lines. You want it's a bunch of gradients from the contouring and stuff. So as you're doing this, building this process, if you can avoid making really distinct edges to the facial features, that'll make it look a little bit more believable. I want him to look like he's got some cheeks, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to come down in this direction. So this is going to start that shadowing process of where the bottom of those cheeks are. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I know that this side I'm going to have a little bit darker than that side, so I can get a little bit more aggressive with the amount of darkness I'm putting, so I can even pick up a little bit more paint as I'm going through this side over in through here. So I just picked up a little bit more of that dark skin tone, and I'm just bringing it in through here. I'm again making sure that I have soft edges, so I don't want that to be really a distinct line where it's going to meet that skin tone. I will get these to blend into the skin tone a little bit more in a minute, but right now I just want to establish this this area that's going to be a little bit darker. I'm going to pick up more of my dark skin tone, and I'm going to kind of establish where I want the corners of the eyes so I can build my contours or my shadows off of that. So I'm just going to kind of go directly up from the corner of my nose, somewhere in through here, give myself a little dot in through here and in through here. And again, I'm wiping my brush off on my paper towel because I don't want to have too much paint. So this, if you were to go travel from the bottom of the nose to the top of the head, it's going to be a little bit higher than the halfway point. So this is about the halfway point. I'm a little bit higher than that, and I'm out at almost the same distance as those nostrils. And again, wiping my brush off on my paper towel. And I'm just kind of giving myself the outside kind of shape of those eyes. Again, this is really just to tell me where they are. I don't need to do any detail to them. Now that I have that, I know that a little bit more in from that is the bridge of the nose, and I want this left-hand side to be a little bit darker. So I put a little bit more of that dark skin tone on my brush. I'm going to come from this inner eye. I'm going to come in just a little bit more like that. I'm going to bring this down so it's a little bit before here. I'm going to start this little kind of dip like this to establish the bubble part of the nose. I'm going to lightly blend this on top of here. So this nostril now is going to be a little bit darker than that one. And I'm going to use this darker tone on this side of the face in order, again, to get this side of the face to go darker than that side. Again, I've hardly got any paint on my brush. I'm really just kind of loosely or dry brushing it on here. While I'm over on this side, I'm going to put some, now that I know where the nose is here, I got a little nostril here. This is going to be darker on the face and through here. I think I'm going to actually put a little bit more darkness in through here. I just picked up more of my dark skin tone just to get this a little bit darker in through here, and then make sure that it blends with that side of the face. And again, I'm leaving soft edges. I'm going to blend it in a little bit more in a minute, but this is just kind of starting that process. Allowing myself to just kind of blend this in a little bit, get it to go a little bit darker around this nostril in through here. And then I'm going to, while I'm over here, I'm putting in the kind of the wrinkles of sorts underneath the eyes in through here. I'm going to bring a little bit more of this dark skin to start my wrinkles on the outside of the eyes, because now that I know where they are, where the eyes are, I can start to establish where I want some wrinkles and stuff. So really what I'm doing is I'm going from the corner of the eye, just kind of pulling out a little bit of wrinkles in through here. I know that if my light source is over there, if this was kind of like a little bag underneath the eye, the left side would be a little bit more shadowed than the right side. So I'm going to pull a little bit more darkness in through there, like that. I'm also going to just continue to put as many wrinkles on as I want. I want my Santa to look pretty happy and cheerful, so I'm putting the wrinkles kind of in an upward direction, in an upward kind of motion, and that's just another little trick in order to give a good expression on them. I'm going to just kind of pull this in a little bit more so I can get that good tone in there. I'm going to do the same thing over on the other eye, but this side I don't need to be as dark as here. So I'm going to actually pick up my dark skin plus my light skin color. I have both dark skin and light skin on my brush in very little bit. I'm going to again take it a little bit in from the corner of this eye, and you can see how much different it is from that. So I just did my dark skin plus my light skin, leaving myself some very soft edges, bringing it down in through here. Going to give myself that little part on the nose, little bubble part in through there, something like that. So I'm giving it a similar shape from one side to the next, bringing it out over on this side. And again, I'm not as light or not as dark as over here, because I'm using my light skin and my dark skin at the same time, and very little bit on my brush. I'm going to do the same thing with adding the markings underneath the eye. So something like this. I'm going to give them a couple little wrinkles over on this side. And again, you can have as many wrinkles as you want or as few as you want, and we can make them deeper as we go through the process. This again is just kind of starting the process for us. Softer lines are better, and then we got our contours in through there. I'm going to stick some of my dark skin on to put also a shadow underneath my eyebrows. So I'm just bringing this up from these dark kind of corners in the face like this, and then just kind of establishing almost like a little base for where I want my eyebrows to go, because the eyebrow hair will cast a shadow on the face. So this starts that process in order to give me a little bit of a base underneath those eyebrows. And of course your eyebrows can be as big or as little as you want. And now I need to put some shadow underneath that hat. So I'm again just picking up that dark skin tone, and I definitely want a lot of darkness up underneath the hat and through here. And I'm just going to kind of blend it into the skin tone like that. I'm going to put some over on this right hand side too in a minute. I'm coming down this edge of the face in through here, because I know that this side of the face is going to be darker than that side of the face. So just adding just a little bit more. And again, I haven't picked up any other color right now except for that dark skin tone. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here, only less dramatic. I'm going to take up less space. So I'm just going to put a little bit in through here like that. And then over on this side, I'm going to pick up my light skin tone with my dark skin tone, just to get this to have a little bit of a shadow, maybe underneath the hat, but not as dark as the other side. And then what I'm going to do, once I've got this established, this is looking pretty good to me. Oh, I need a little bit in the mouth. I'm picking up a tiny bit of the dark skin tone. I'm going to put a little bit in this mouth, blending it maybe a little bit upwards, and maybe that bottom part is a little bit, keep it a little bit lighter, because maybe the bottom lip is a little bit lighter, so that works. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pick up some of my regular skin tone to get this to blend a little bit better, and to make sure that I have a second coat. I'm not washing my brush. I'm just going to start over here on the left hand side with my original skin tone. And what I'm doing here is I'm starting where I hadn't put the shadow, and then I overlap it with a dry brush technique on top of that shadowy area. So what this does is it provides me with these really soft, natural blends from one tone to the next. And you might find that as you go through this process that you want to blend everything as it's wet, but for me this is one of my techniques that helps me to get the softness of the tones of the skin as it dries. And as I build my layers, I will add more to it, but this helps me to start the process. So I just picked up a little bit more of my skin tone. Again, just putting that on in through here, making sure I have my second coat and making sure that these shadows are talking well with the rest of the area. And we're gonna put more accentuated shadows and highlights. Ooh, I think I want a couple of wrinkles in the forehead. I'm picking up a tiny bit of my dark skin plus my light skin. I want a couple of wrinkles kind of coming up in this forehead in through here. So just a little bit in through here. We can't have Santa looking too young, so let's put a couple of wrinkles in his forehead. So again, this was just my regular skin tone plus a tiny bit of the dark skin tone, and I'm just establishing a couple of faint marks in through that forehead, and we'll adjust them later. This is just going to get us started. That's looking pretty good. So again, just picking up my regular skin tone at this point to make sure that I've got my edges soft enough and that everything is starting to talk well together. And again, one of my biggest things with when I do skin portraits is I really love to layer, because to me, layering the skin or layering the layers of paint is what's going to, for me, look the most representational of a human skin, because our skin has a million layers in it. So as I go through this process, sure, one step may look like I didn't do a whole heck of a lot, but I am building my way to the surface of that skin. I'm allowing for my shadows to naturally look like they're blending in with the rest. I'm allowing for all of my edges to be really soft. There may be areas when I intensify my wrinkles and stuff like that where I want firmer edges, but during the building process, I do it in this gradual way so I can adjust the values, so I can make everything really look nice and soft and smooth. That's why I'm using my bristle brush, even though that would tend to show your brush marks. It helps me to push that paint and give myself these really soft edges that can overlap one another and look as if they're a beautiful blend, when in essence they're just really thin paint laying on top of something else where you're being able to see through it. So it's the way that I like to do it. But as we build this, you'll find your own way. So once we've got this layer, we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to put the rosiness in the skin tone. So whenever I think of either like a little child in a cold snow, or a happy child that just got done playing in the park, and Santa Claus, I always think of these like bright red, like excited, childlike pink cheeks and stuff. So I'm going to incorporate that in my Santa Claus so he looks like he does in my head. And he looks happy and jovial and jolly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using my original skin tone plus a little bit of red. And if I need to use any other colors, I certainly will. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding some rosiness to his cheeks. I'll add a little bit on the nose. I'll even put a little bit around those eyes to make it look more of a believable type of a skin tone, because we have blood circulating through our veins and our skin and stuff, and when you go towards like the eyes or the fingertips, you're going to see a little bit more of a pinkish hue to them. So I'm going to add a little bit of, we'll call it rosiness though, in through there, maybe a little bit in the forehead and those wrinkles. And then that'll be this step. So I have pre-mixed myself my rosy color. How I got to that was I used my skin tone plus a little bit of red. So I'm just putting a little bit more of a reddish hue to my skin tone. I don't need to do a whole heck of a lot. We're going to be adding some darker tones to it later and lighter tones, but this again is just going to get that rosy hue to it. So once I've established my rosy color, I'm going to put it where I want to. So of course I want to have it on the cheeks, and I don't want to do the whole cheek, so I'm going to start kind of in the middle of the cheek and kind of bring it maybe in the bottom region of the cheek, but make sure that it blends with that upper region as well. So I'm going to put it down in through here. I'm going to take my paper towel, make sure I don't have too much paint on my brush, and again just kind of let it blend out by using a dry brush technique. So when I run out of paint, that's when I can start just kind of dry brushing it into that neighboring color. And then once it dries, then I can come back with the other skin tone and blend it over it. So if you're doing this type of process, you can certainly put it in a little bit larger of an area that you anticipate, because then when you come back and kind of overlap it with that regular skin tone, you might make that area a little bit smaller. So I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute, but right now just kind of getting that on there. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my rosiness, put a little bit maybe in this area in through here. And I know for me that my paint will get a little bit darker as it dries, so I'm allowing for that to happen. And plus I had some good red in my bristles too, so that'll also kind of add a little darker note to it as I'm doing this. So just a little bit in these eyes and through there, maybe a tiny bit. And again, I keep wiping my brush off on my paper towel because I really don't want to have a ton of paint on my brush. Just maybe put a little bit up in these wrinkles and just dry brushing it to establish maybe a deeper dip in those wrinkles. And you can have different wrinkles than mine. Yours don't have to be exactly where mine are. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of this rosy color to put over on this cheek in through here. And because we had a darker tone underneath here, this side when it dries will end up looking a little bit darker than that side, even though that side looks like I might have had a little extra red in my brush on that side, but we'll get that to make sense in a little bit here, and then just bringing this up in through here, all the way up on this side, over in through here. I'm actually going to put another layer on here of the, I think I had too much red in my brush, so I'm just going to put another little layer over here to make that not as red. There we go. And then of course, when I put my skin tone on top of it, that will counteract that. And then again, just a little bit of that rosy color. I'm going to put some underneath this eye in through here, like this. Maybe some up in through here. We got lots of rosiness on this side. I'm digging it. And put some over on this side of the face in through here. Don't want to get rid of all of my wrinkle in through there. And then again, like I said, because this darker tone that we have underneath is there, it'll get this side to look a little bit darker as it dries. And we're going to be putting another shade on there in a little bit as well. And before I get it to blend into the regular skin, I just want to make sure that I've got everywhere that I want. That looks pretty good. So now I'm going to pick up my regular skin tone on my dirty brush. Well, no, I'm going to wash my brush. That was a little too pink. I'm going to wash my brush, pick up my regular skin tone, and get this to the top of the cheek to blend in with the bottom of the cheek. And again, I just keep taking my brush and rubbing it off on my paper towel so I don't have too much paint on there, and getting it to blend out down into that rosiness. So that's looking pretty good in through there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So this is just my regular skin tone in order to get it to blend down into that rosiness. And it just kind of overlaps. You can see I'm just kind of dry brushing it on top of it. And if your paint was too wet and you used a little bit more paint than I did, you can certainly wait for it to dry, or you can blend them together as they're drying. That works too. Again, these bristle brushes that I like to use are great because they will blend that paint out pretty far. I want to put a little bit of this rosiness on the nose as well. So I just picked up a little bit of that rosy color. I'm putting it down this left-hand side of the nose. And through here, we're going to put a little bit on this bubble part of the nose and through here. This part is going to turn into a little bit more of a shadowed part, so I don't really need to do too much more in through there. I digging this. He's looking so cute already. Maybe we'll just have him sleeping with his eyes closed. Just kidding. We'll open his eyes in a little bit. But that's looking pretty good to me. Let me put a little bit of rosiness in his lips too. In through here, just maybe a little bit more red. I just picked up a tiny bit more red just to put this just a little bit darker right in through here. So that was just a touch of red with my rosiness. Just gave a little more red to that one. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry the medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the skin. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, red, blue, rose, maybe some skin tone, and white. What I'm going to do is I really want to finish up all of the deep dark shadows, put any little finessing on them that I feel is necessary, as well as some highlights in order to finish out the contours. So I'm going to be amplifying the darkness on this left hand side, putting some little dark nostrils, making sure that it's dark enough underneath that nose as well as dark enough on this left hand side. This whole cheek is going to get a little bit darker than that cheek, and I'm going to make sure that my shadows underneath this hat are really deep, and then I'm going to finesse all of my other little dark areas. We'll put some brightness on those cheeks and maybe the tip of the nose so it looks all nice and shiny, and then we'll call it. So I'm going to start with a teeny tiny bit of black and brown on my brush. So just an itty bitty bit. I'm really going to put some deep darkness underneath this corner and in my nostrils. So again, just an itty bitty bit. I'm going to go right up into here, just give myself a little tiny bit of darkness right in that nostril area, right in through here, and right about in through here. And the trick to this is I just need a teeny tiny bit at the bottom. His head is tipped down a little bit, like forward. The top is forward a little bit, so I just need an itty bitty bit. I'm gonna wipe my brush off on my paper towel, make sure I have hardly any paint on there at this point, and then just bring this across, maybe add just a little bit of darkness in through here. So right now I have very little bit of paint on my brush. I'm just adding an extra little bit of darkness over here on this left hand side, making sure it's nice and dark underneath the nose, which is going to support his head being which will tell the viewer that his head is down a little bit. And if you feel that this is, yours is just black, then you can always put a little bit of water on your brush and wipe your brush off on your paper towel. That'll give you almost like a more of a wash type of, or a glaze type of way to apply this darkness. Actually, I think I'm going to pick up a tiny bit more brown paint just on this little edge of this nostril in through here. I don't feel like it's going dark enough on me. And the great thing is you can always add more darkness to it. For me, it's easier to keep adding dark than it is to have to back the dark away. So I'm just kind of gently adding a little bit at a time, picking up a little bit more water on my brush just to make sure this shadow underneath this nostril is the way that I want it. So just adding a little bit more in through here and making sure that that kind of blends the way that I want it to. That's looking pretty good in through there. And now I'm going to just keep working on this left hand side. So I'm going to pick up more black and brown so I can get my deep dark shadow underneath this little hat in through here. So this is black and brown on my brush. I'm bringing a good shadow almost halfway into the halfway mark of the hat. I'm going to bring it really pretty dark down on this side underneath my hat, maybe down this side of the face. And now's the time when I start wiping my brush off and maybe adding a little bit of water on my brush so I can get my dark shadow to just kind of dissipate as it's coming down and into the light, so to speak. Maybe I'll bring a little bit of this over on this side of the eye as well. So I'm just kind of giving just a little bit more amplified darkness on this side of the face, again, to speak to where I have my light source and what I want that light source to do. I'm going to bring a little bit of this down. I'm just using the remnants on my brush right now, bringing this down and through here. I'm even kind of overlapping it a little bit into that beard, and I'm going to pick up just a teeny bit more, again, of that black and brown, very itty bitty bit, so I can put just a little bit more darkness in this corner of the eye and through here. Maybe just a touch more black, not a lot, just a little bit. Again, going a little bit darker is to me, I can handle that. I just don't want to run the risk of having to fight with backing it off. So this is looking pretty good. And then I'm going to put a little bit more under this eye in through here. And again, you could certainly use a littler brush if that works for you, but I love these bristle brushes because, again, it kind of keeps my paint, I have the ability to keep that paint open and keep moving it as it's drying. So they're firm bristles. So they really work well for me. That's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit more darkness in this area in through here. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over on this right hand side to just make sure I've got a little bit more maybe up in through here, bring it down a little bit more around the eye. We are going to be doing the eyes as well in a little bit, which will help to finesse a lot of this stuff around the eyes also. But right now I'm just really looking to finalize the main part of the skin. So just kind of, accentuating any little wrinkles that I want to with a little bit of extra darkness, and making sure the shadows go down into the beard the way that I want. I'm just picking up a little bit more of my black and brown, making sure that I've got a little bit of shadow up at this top where the beard is going to meet the lips and through here. And of course that can also be finessed when you're doing the beard itself. I'm going to now make myself a dark kind of plum type of a color, reddish plum type of a color, to amp up the darkness on this left side without going too brown. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to take my rose color right here, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue, and let's go blue and a little bit of red to it. So blue and red makes purple, and the rose color already has a little bit of that light pinkish tone to it, so that helps me establish my opacity with that rose color. And then I think I'm going to put a little bit of brown in there too. So I did my rose plus a little bit of blue, red, and brown. So this gives me a shadowy tone to my skin over here on the left hand side. So a little bit of kind of almost like a purpley type of a color. So that works in through there for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, and I'm going to make this left maybe a little bit more red now that I see it on the skin itself. I just added a touch more red to it because that's too purple for me. So I added a touch more red so you can see where I'm headed here. And now that I've got the color I want, there we go, that looks better. I'm going to just make this side a little bit darker, and again, this is going to help make this side look like it's in the shadow. So I'm just taking this purpley tone with a dry brush and allowing it to work itself into those skin tones that we already had. You can also use this to accentuate those wrinkles. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more. I'm going to put a little bit on this side of the face. I really want to make sure that you can see the darkness on this left-hand side of the face. So I'm bringing this purpley tone all the way up and even overlapping it into that shadow a little bit. So it really gives the illusion of this side of the face being in the shadow. I'm going to put some underneath this eye here, in through here, get it to make sure it goes into those little wrinkles, making sure I've got it underneath and through here. And again, I probably could have done this in an earlier stage when I was doing the first rosiness, but to me, building it in this way just makes it a little bit easier for my brain to digest. As you're learning how to do portraits and things of that nature, you tend to see how other people do it and then kind of tweak it to whatever is going to work best for you. I'm going to put a little bit more of this darker tone on this left-hand side of the nose as well. And you can see as I'm getting these tones to shift as it goes towards this left-hand side, it's really putting the shadow over on this left side of the face and getting these one area to kind of gently work its way into another. I'm going to pick up some of my regular skin tone on my dirty brush right now to get these to talk better together. So I just picked up a little bit of my regular skin tone to get it to blend down into that purpley tone. Now I'm picking up the purpley tone because they're not blending the way that I want them to. So I just kind of keep alternating them to get them to work well together. And, you know, another thing is you'll find that, of course, I continue to do these layers. And as the layers are wet, they're going to look a little bit different than when they're dry. So you work your way through the process and then you start putting wet paint on top and thinking that it was the color that you wanted, and then it turns a little bit different as it dries. So you got to work your way through that. I'm picking up a little bit more of my regular skin tone just to add little bits in these wrinkles and through here. This is looking so cute to me. So this is pretty good. I've got my darkness where I want it, maybe a little bit more of my plum type of color. Not a lot, just a little bit down in through here to get this side of the cheek to have its shadow. That's looking good. I'm just got my head back right now looking to see if there's anything else I want to do before I add the little bits of highlights. Maybe a touch of the plum in maybe one or two of these little wrinkles, just setting them a little bit darker. That looks pretty good. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my my last bit of kind of rosiness to these cheeks and the tip of the nose. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of white paint with my original skin tone. So I have white paint and my original skin tone, and I want my cheeks to look really pretty shiny and like they're popping out to us. So I just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I don't need a lot. I'm just going to kind of take this and give myself a little bit of brightness in through here. Now I'm picking up more of my skin tone just to make sure that I've got it established the way that I want it to. And again, if that's that's a little bit too white, I just picked up more of my skin tone just to dull it down a little bit, and you just keep tweaking it. So now I'm going into my plum, or my, my rose color to get that to blend out. And again, when it's wet, it's going to look a little bit different than when it dries. So I will let this kind of sit for a second while I go do the other one, which is going to be a tiny bit of white paint. And I'm going to use, I'm just picking up a tiny bit of white paint actually, just a little itty bitty bit of white paint in through here, and just going to work it around. And just making it blend in. And maybe a touch up and through here. And I'm going to put a tiny bit on the nose. So itty bitty bit, just a teeny tiny bit of white paint. My light source is kind of to the right, so I'm going to add a little bit on that right hand side. Blend it up, maybe a touch up and through here. Touch on that little right nostril. And now I'm going to pick up my original skin tone just to make sure that this blends in well. And then once I've got, that's the gist of the skin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it dry for a couple minutes. If I want any areas to pop out a little bit more, like any of these wrinkles, I can certainly add just a little bit more lightness. Ooh, maybe the, no, I'm going to do the eyelids when I do the eyes. But I'm going to let it dry. And if there's any other adjusting that I feel I need to do, like making the cheeks pop out a little bit more or anything, I certainly will do that. But this is looking pretty good to me at this point. So I'm going to call it on the skin, and then we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put the medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our eyes. We'll be doing like eyebrows and any little eyelid finessing in a little bit, but right now we're going to just focus on the eyeballs. I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to be using blue, gray, black, white, and brown. And if there's any other colors I'm going to use, I'll let you know. What I'm going to first do is I'm going to kind of establish just a more distinct outline for where I want the actual eyes to go, because right now we just have kind of a soft generic placement, but this way this will get you to put them similar in size. Like I see my left one is a little bit larger than my right one, so I'll get them similar in size. They don't have to be perfect, but it'll look more natural if they're closer. And then we'll put some colored part on the inside and we'll do some details. I'm going to start with a tiny bit of brown paint on my brush. And I'm really going to just kind of take this brown paint and give myself a little bit more of a distinct kind of outline where I want my eye to go. We'll add a little bit of skin and all kinds of other detail around it, but this is just going to kind of give me my barriers to where I want to have all of my interior details to go. So that's good. And I'm just using a little sketcherly line to establish this. So just making sure it's pretty similar in height to what I have over there, and maybe pretty similar in width. So I think this one, I want to kind of come down a little bit more like this. And of course, again, they don't have to be perfect in size with one another, but something similar will give you a little bit better of a shot at make them look a little bit more realistic. So that's looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a custom blue color for the eyes. I've done it here. What I did was I took gray, my gray paint from my hat, and I added a little bit of cobalt blue to it. So this way it looks nice and natural and it's not too vibrant and too unnatural. So this is the color that I'm starting with. I've got my blue established, and I'm going to have a large section. I'm going to start over here on the left hand side, and I'm going to leaving a little bit there on the in between my colored part and the corner, and I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. So I want my Santa to almost look like his head is tipped down just a little bit. So I'm putting the colored part of the bottom part of the colored part right down, touching here, and then the top part is kind of hidden underneath the eyelid a little bit. I'm going to section off an area where I want my pupil to go, and then I'm just going to color this in a little bit, or not a little bit, a lot of it with my blue color. So just coloring that in with blue, and then I'll do the same thing on the other eye. Just giving myself nice clean edges there. So again, I'm going to start over here, going to give myself the bottom, the crescent outline of the eye. Going to bring this over in this direction, and then again I'm seeing almost the whole bottom of that colored part of the eye. You could certainly hide yours a little bit underneath the bottom eyelid as well. That's going to be a judgment call on your part, but I'm doing it so it looks like his head is down a little bit, and then I'm going to try and give the pupil section at a similar size as the other side. And again, they don't have to be perfect. You're going to have shadows and eyelashes and all kinds of stuff disguising the fact of these being perfect from one side to the other. So once I've got that on there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of black paint, and I'm going to paint in a black area for the pupil in through here. And I'm just using black paint right now. I'm doing a thin coat so that way it dries pretty quickly. As you're going through this process, I know that I'm just going back to back to back with these little steps, but if you have more time on your hands and you want to let yours dry a little bit longer, you could certainly put a little bit thicker coat than I'm doing, but I'm just doing a thin layer, coloring in that whole section, making sure I get to the edges in through here. You could also, I'm going to put a tiny bit of water on my brush so I can get this edge nice and crisp over there. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. Again, just a little bit of black paint, bringing it right up to that brown line that I had established, and then just giving this crescent type of a shape for my pupil. And there's so many various ways that you can do eyes, and I oftentimes do them in different orders. Like I do my steps in different orders in order to accomplish the full scope of the eye. But you know, again, there's lots of different ways. The way that I'm teaching you today was just a great way because there's such high contrast in the colors. the black to the blue eye that I'm using. So this is the technique that I'm using. So I'm going to wash my brush. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish the blue part of the eye. So I'm going to pick up my cobalt blue plus a little bit of brown on my brush. This is going to give me a nice deep dark blue color that I'm going to put as almost like an outline of the colored part of the eye. So this is blue plus a little bit of brown on my brush. Again, I'm just giving myself this really nice dark, almost like an outline around that light blue, which will make that light blue kind of pop out a little bit more. And again, it doesn't have to be a crisp line. It can be kind of crisp on the outside of that section. I'm just reloading my brush here. But I've got it kind of soft on the inside. I'm also going to put a little dark blue area around the pupil. So this, once you get into the interior of the eye, it can be more speckly as opposed to clean lines like that outside. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye, which is blue plus brown. I'm going to give myself kind of a clean exterior line like this, and then I will kind of rub it into, make it a little bit softer as it's going into the colored part of the eye. So I did that, then I just kind of rub it a little bit so it's a little bit softer on this inside edge, and then I'm going to kind of polka dot it a little bit around that pupil, which is going to give it a nice effect. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up my light blue color plus a little bit of white. So this is light blue plus white, and I'm going to give myself a couple of little sparkly spots in this center area of the colored section. You can make it go really white if you want to, but I'm going to have a twinkle in the eye, and I don't want this to be confused with that twinkle in the eye that I'm going to put in a minute. So this is just intended to lighten up the bottom portion color of the eye. So again, this is light blue plus a little bit of white, and it's meant to just kind of give me more diversity in the colored part of the eye. And of course you can modify this whatever way you want, but I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good for me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush again. I'm going to work on the little whites of the eyes. So I'm picking up a tiny bit of white paint on my brush. I don't want these to go all the way white, but I want to add a little bit of lightness in the whites of the eyes. So a little bit here and a little bit here. So I put a little streak of it in the center, and then I just rub it out. So that way it's there, but it's not really bright. You could even, again, put a little bit of water on your brush, but again, I don't want it to be very bright, so I'm just putting a teeny tiny bit in there. You could even put a little bit, I might even put a little bit of gray in there to get it to go darker. If it's too white by the time I put all my other details around, I might even push it back and make it a little bit darker, but that's looking pretty good for now. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm picking up a little bit of brown paint, and I'm going to put a shadow at the top of my eyes. So the eyelids will cast a shadow on the eye itself. So I have a little bit of brown, and I'm going to bring this over the top and through here. I'm going to put some sparkles and stuff like that in a minute, but this is just going to give me a little bit of a shadow within the eye itself. You could do this with gray, you could do it with whatever you want, but definitely a shadow, especially over the colored part of the eyes, is going to make it look a little bit more natural. So again, got some brown on my brush, giving myself a little bit of a shadow in through here. You can put it right over the pupil or not, whatever works for you. Putting it over the pupil actually makes it look like there's a little, almost a glaze on that eye as well, which will add to the illusion. So now that I've got that on there, now I'm gonna put a little twinkle in the eye. So I'm gonna pick up a tiny bit of white paint, and actually I'm gonna go gray first. Sorry, I'm picking up a tiny bit of gray paint. I'm gonna have my twinkle about halfway down and it's going to cross over my pupil into the colored part. So I have a little bit of gray paint, and I just put a tiny bit in through there and going to give a little kind of oblong type of a shape. I'll do the same thing on this side. I cross it over into the colored part. Now I'm going to pick up a touch of white. So I did gray, now I'm going to do white with a little sparkle in the middle of that gray part. So that again just adds a little extra something special to it. And now I got to give him some eyelashes. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to give him some eyelashes and little bits of information around. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint with a little bit of water on my brush, just first to give myself some little creases and stuff before I put my eyelashes. So I'm going to just put a little darkness in through here, maybe a little bit kind of coming down the corner of this eye in through here, maybe just making sure I've got a little bit of darkness back there. You don't have to do anything really fancy other than maybe making sure you've got creases where you want them to be. I think I want a little bit more crease in through here, little shadows where you want them to be. I'm going to put couple little eyelashes on there in a minute, but kind of going at a turtle pace like this, just one little thing at a time, helps again to make it look a little bit more natural. That's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to add some eyelashes. So when I add the eyelashes, I'm black with a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm going to have his eyelashes kind of coming down over his eye. So I have black with a little bit of water on my brush. I'm first going to just kind of make sure I have a clean entry in through here, and then very little bit of paint I'm just going to kind of bring down in this kind of curved type of way, just little bits of eyelashes kind of coming down in this way over his eye a little bit. You can certainly have yours going up if you wanted to. I'm just choosing to do them down like this. It's you know, up to you how you want that, how you want to establish your eyelashes, something like that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye with a little bit black with a little bit of water on my brush, making sure I've got this top kind of cleaned up, making sure it's kind of closed off as much as I needed to. And when you have like little additional pieces of skin here and there, that again is just going to make it look a little bit more natural. Trying to keep this similar to the other one, so just bringing these kind of down into the right over in through here. And then once I've got this done, what I'll do is I will let it dry. I'll step back from it for a minute, see if there's any additional marks that I want to put for eyelashes or sparkles in the eye, and then we're gonna do the eyelids and stuff in a second here on the next step. But I'm thinking that this is pretty good in through here. So when I do the eyelids, I can get this skin to kind of blend in a little bit better around there. But that's looking pretty good to me. I'm going to let it dry, step back, see if there's any little tweaks I want to do, and then we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your cute Santa eyes, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish his eyebrows and any little like eyelids and skin around the eyes. I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are, I'm going to use my tan, white, maybe a little bit of black, and maybe some skin tones, but I'll call them out as I use them. So what I'm looking to do is just kind of finesse these eyelids, maybe do a similar process that I did on the cheeks with adding little highlights to get them to puff out a little bit and give myself a little bit of hair on his eyebrows. So I'm going to start with my tan color, so I can start these eyebrows and do it in a kind of a layering type of a process. So I have very little bit of tan on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of start his bushy little eyebrows, making sure I keep a tiny bit of that tan or the brown underneath it showing. I don't need to cover up that all the way. This is really, that was intended to give me some good dimension on these eyebrows. So the gray is just kind of acting as a layer on top of that, or the tan is just acting as a layer on top of the brown. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to let that rest for a second. And then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit. I washed and dried my brush. I'm picking up a teeny tiny bit of black paint so I can add just a couple of really deep shadowy type of eyebrows in through here. So this is a itty bitty bit of black paint on the tip of my brush, and I'm pulling it up so it looks like there's these little just little tiny shadowy pieces inside that brow. And if you felt like you wanted this to get a little bit darker down here, you can just pull a little bit of that, a tiny bit more of that darkness down in through there. And I'm now, while that's drying, just going to finesse around these eyes. I want to finish those eyelids. So I'm going to pick, I washed and dried my brush. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint, just an itty bitty bit on my brush. I'm going to establish where I want that little brightness or part of the eyelid to pop out. So that's going to be kind of in the center over to the right a little bit. That works. And on this one, maybe it's up in this vicinity. Again, I'm thinking of where my light source is, so maybe on this one it's a little bit more to the right, and that one it's a little bit more to the right on that side. A little bit, adding just a little bit more. It wasn't going light enough for me, so we just added a little bit more. And when I've got this on here, I can certainly kind of tweak any of these little kind of wrinkles or anything. I keep wiping one of my tricks too is I wipe my brush off a lot on my paper towel to control the quantity of paint that is on my brush. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to pull in a little bit of my original skin tone just to get that to blend in a little bit better around the edges. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And of course, when you're doing this, like on this eye, I feel that I want a little bit of my light skin tone, my original skin tone, to add these little bits of extra kind of pops in these wrinkles. So as you're going through this process, if you know my light source is over there and I've got some extra bags under the eye, they would get illuminated on this side in through here. So I can fiddle with that as the process is going through. I also feel like I want a little bit more darkness in here, so I'm going to pick up some of that dark skin tone that we created a while ago, and this is the dark side of the eye because the highlight is on the right hand side, so I can elevate those tones as I am finishing up these final little strokes for the eyes. I'm going to pick up a little bit too of that rose color that we created, or maybe, yeah, a little bit of that rose color, maybe a little bit of that dark plum too. So I have rose and plum on my brush. I feel like I want a little bit more of this shadowy color over here. So this was rose plus that dark plummy color. Get it just a little bit in this eye to have these shadows kind of match these shadows a little bit over here. That's looking pretty good. And that's maybe a little bit more up in this little part of the eye there, a little bit here, a little bit there. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Yeah, I like that. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to finish up those eyebrows with a little bit of white and gray. So I have white and gray on my brush at the same time. And this is just going to give me just these little beautiful notes of Santa Claus's eyebrows. And of course, I'm putting them a little bit bushier in this towards the center of the head and just making them a little bit more narrow over here. And if you ever do anything where you're like, wow, that was just a lot, just wait for it to dry and put a little bit, back it off with either your skin color or the gray or the tan. But right now, I don't even know if I said I was going to use the gray in this step, but I am using it with a little bit of white. On top of that tan allows it to really look like it's gray hair, as with those other notes underneath it. So that's looking good. And again, I would just let this dry and see if there's any additional little tweaks that I want to put. Just add a little bit more white in through here, and then we are going to be using this, we're going to use our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the hat and the jacket. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm going to use are black, red, white, and gray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding a second layer to the hat and the jacket with strategically placed shadows and highlights in order to give them dimension and texture and form. I'm going to start with my red areas first. I'm going to pick up red plus a teeny tiny bit of black paint. So I have red with just a teeny tiny bit of black paint, and the black can very easily take over. So just tap it off on your paper towel or something to make sure that you don't have a lot on there. I'm going to tap it down at the bottom of these sections, so just a little tiny bit, and tapping it up so it just kind of fades into that red. I'm going to do the same thing down on this side here, so just a itty bitty bit. I'm hardly touching my canvas, just a little bit of darkness down in through there. I'm going to do the same thing on this part of the hat, so just you can, if you bump into the beard, that's okay. If you bump into the pom-pom, that's okay. Just putting a little bit of darkness in through here so we've got some good dimension on it. And then just kind of lightly tapping it so it blends a little bit with that little part of the red. I'm going to put a teeny tiny bit right up in through here as well, so it looks like the top part of the hat is shadowing down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush. You don't have to wash it perfectly, just get a good amount of that black off. I'm picking up red paint and I'm going to finish a second coat on all of these red areas with red paint. And I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight in a second, but on the areas that I feel need it. But right now that's good there. I'm just tapping my red paint right on top of the first layer. So again, what's going to happen is this is going to provide me a really nice second coat, making sure everything has paint on it. And now that I've got that established, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush. And when I mean a tiny bit, I mean just a itty bitty bit on the corner of your brush. I'm going to add this little bit of highlighted texture on my predominantly on the top side of these pieces, but on this one I'm going to do a little bit on the left hand side too, so that way I can get this edge to look like like you can't see through it. So just a little bit of red and white is going to give me this edge in through here. So if you run out of paint, just pick up a tiny bit of both red and white, like that. And you can even get this center area to look a little bit fuller if you bring this over a little bit. I'm not going to put any of my red and white at the top of here in here because those to me would be shadowed by the collar of the jacket. But I am going to put a little bit more paint in through here. So this cover this little edge really well for me. There we go. Now it is satisfying me. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up my gray. I hope I said I was going to use gray. I think I did. My gray plus a little bit of black paint. So a little bit of black paint plus gray on my brush, so equal parts but very little bit of each. And I'm going to do a similar process to what I did with the red areas, only now I'm going to do what will be the white areas of the jacket and the hat. So black plus a teeny bit of your gray. Let me just move this a little bit so I can get it. I'm going to put both colors down in this area, down in through here. So just a little bit at the bottom, and just get it to blend up just a little bit. And again, I'm hardly touching my canvas as I go up. This pom-pom is going to have a little bit of shadow at the bottom of it. So this is where I can start to get rid of my my guideline that I left, so I didn't forget where it was. So the pom-pom has a little bit of shadow at the bottom, and then this one over here, just a little bit at the bottom. I don't need much, just a little bit to say that this is the bottom of it. And now, without washing my brush this time, I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel and pick up gray to get this to just make sure that it blends well as it's going up. So I just picked up a little bit of gray to make sure. Oh, I need to do the same thing to the hat too before I add. I'll do the hat separately, I guess. So this is just gray to make sure that this blends in pretty well. And then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush. So a little bit of white paint on my dirty brush, and this is going to be the top edges of these pieces. So the white is going to get it to look nice and fluffy, and that it's at the top, and that it'll just get it to blend down. I'm thinking that this pom-pom is pretty far in front, so I can put white paint underneath here as if that's the top of the shoulder of his jacket. So you got, I mean, I suppose the pom-pom would probably cast a little bit of a shadow on it, but I'm thinking that that looks just fine to me. I'm going to put a little bit of white up at the top of this side over here. So a little bit of white on my brush. And I'm doing this jacket and the hat first before I do the beard, because to me it's behind the beard. And then we're going to save the glove for later because it's in front of the beard. So when I build this kind of stuff, I'm trying to build from the back forward where it makes sense to do so. It doesn't always work out that way, but for me that makes it easier if I can do it that way. So I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm picking up just a itty bitty bit of black and gray just to give myself a tiny bit of a shadow at the bottom of this hat portion, just to make sure that it overlaps the skin enough and that I've got a little bit of a dimensional kind of element to it, like that. Maybe a tiny bit down here. Again, not much, hardly anything is coming down here, but enough to give me some dimension. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up some gray just to make sure, again, that what I just did, that shadowy area, just blends up into the brighter area of the hat. And then I'm going to pick up white paint. I am wiping my brush off on my paper towel. You could certainly wash your brush if you wanted to, but I'm thinking I'm pretty safe with just picking up white paint. And I'm going to start right at the tippy top, make it really bright white up at the top, and then I'll just kind of let myself almost run out of paint as I'm tapping it down, getting it to blend in with that darker stuff with the tapping motion. If I, again, was to do a full-on brush stroke with swirls or with left to right motion, that would take away from the fluffiness that I'm trying to accomplish. So I'm just going with this tapping motion and utilizing the colors from light to dark to give me my form within that particular shape. And then again, I would let it dry. I might elevate the white a little bit more. I might put a little bit more shadow here or there, but that's pretty much the majority of what I'm going to do with those objects. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your hat and your jacket all nice and set, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the beard. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, white, my tan color, and my gray color. I really want this beard to read as a gray beard and not like a blonde beard, so I'm definitely going to be incorporating some of that gray color, similarly to how I did the eyebrows. But because I have this tan brownish base to it, it will show as a different color and stand out as something different than the glove and the clothing on Santa. I'm going to use my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be creating the hair in a purposeful directional way in order to establish like the mustache, having that pop out and be different than the actual beard itself. I'm going to have lots of straggly and curly wavy hair coming down in through here, put little shadows underneath that mustache and make sure the hair goes in the direction that I want. I'm going to have the left side a little bit darker than the right side in order, again, to speak to where that light source is. So I'm going to start with my dark areas and build my way to the light. I'm going to start, I think I told you the colors, brown, black, gray, tan, and white. I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black and brown on my brush at the same time. And again, very little bit on my brush. I'm going to start in my dark areas, which are going to be over here on the left, underneath the mustache, and around the mouth. Little tiny bit on my brush. I'm going to bring this underneath where that hat is, so it almost looks like the hair is being shadowed by the hat. This step is where we're going to overlap our hair into the face as well. So this is where we're going to start to close off all of those little gaps that make one area look different or separated from the other. So we want to close all of those off right now. So I can bring this out over here on the left-hand side. Maybe some of these wavy pieces of hair are casting a shadow on the hat, just making sure it looks nice and soft and natural over there. I'm reloading with a little bit of brown and black. I'm coming down this left-hand side. Again, I'm looking right now to close off any visible areas that the beard would kind of cast a little bit of a shadow on the garment next to it, and to add shadows into this into the beard. Again, I'm going to just pull this down a little bit so I can get down in through here. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, and I am kind of using my directional brush stroke to give myself a little bit of wave in this bearded area. I'm going to have my mustache kind of overlapping into my overlapping my beard, so I definitely need some shadowy areas at the bottom of this mustache in through here. So I'm just using the corner of my brush right now, and it's okay to bump into your finger because we're going to be finishing the finger in a little bit. You can go in an upward motion or in a downward motion, whatever works for you. I'm just using the little corner of my brush to give myself some nice shadow underneath that mustache. I want my mustache to kind of curl up in through here, so I'm going to bring these shadows down in this direction, and I'm steering my beard hair going upwards. So this again is just helping to establish what the direction of the beard is going to be. I'm going to add other colors in a minute, but right now, again, just getting everything in motion here. A little bit of this darkness maybe from the finger. So maybe the finger is casting a little bit of shadow on the hair in through there. Maybe there's a little bit of shadow also from the lip or something. So maybe we've got a little bit of shadow underneath the lip in through here. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just something that you feel works well for you. I might put a little bit at the top of this mustache in through here, as well as if it's being maybe shadowed a little bit by the nose, something like that. I definitely want a tiny bit up in through here underneath this hat area here, but not as much as that left-hand side. So again, this is just really to kind of make sure that I've got it colored in enough and that it they talk to each other the way that I want them to. Maybe a little bit of these darker pieces just kind of shadowing the face a little bit. That looks good. And then maybe just a couple little tiny pieces in through here of the darker nature. I'm going to pick up more brown now to give myself a little bit of shadow underneath here on this side, but I don't need it to go as dark. So I'm picking up more brown as opposed to black for this side in through here. And then again, I'm just going to kind of give myself a little shadow like this. And then maybe just I'm going to pull a little bit of this darkness down in through here. Give it a little bit of different, the mustache is shadowing the beard underneath it. That's looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do without washing my brush is I'm going to pick up some of my tan, because I need to finish this mustache coming up and kind of curling around. So I picked up a little bit more of my tan on my dirty brush. So I'm going to take it with the corner of my brush and I'm going to finish the direction of it because I need it to cross over my skin. And I want to layer it the same way that I layered the stuff underneath. So this is where I am establishing the direction of my mustache. So again, this is just the tan on my brush, steering it, coming off of the face like this, and then just kind of bringing it up in a little bit of a curved motion so we can see a little bit in front of the face like that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, so a little bit of tan on my brush, making sure that I've got this kind of the way that I want it. And I do this in a layering type of way where I can use the colors underneath to amplify the colors on top and to let it all look like it's got its own purpose, its own direction, its own thoughts. I'm getting this to kind of overlap on this hair going down. That's looking good. He's gonna have a fancy mustache. He's gonna have a fancy beard and a fancy mustache. And as you're doing these smaller ones, if you want to pull out the smaller or the medium brush, you can certainly do that. But that's looking pretty good. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pick up my tan and my gray. This is gonna give me a second coat on my beard. So tan plus gray at the same time on my brush. I don't want to overpaint it, so I want to make sure I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, but this is going to, with the tan and the gray, this is where I'm going to get it to overlap in front of my background pieces and make sure that I have a good coat on the whole thing. So crossing over my jacket and my face a little bit, and I've got very little bit of paint on my brush, just using the corner of it, getting it to make sure that it goes in the direction that I want. And because I'm not over painting it, you're going to be able to see the different color variations because I have the tan underneath. I'm using a little bit of gray on my brush. I'm bringing it a little bit up into the face, so overlapping that face a little bit. This one's going to go in front of this one. And again, I'm not doing a whole heck of a lot, just making sure that I have a nice second coat. So this is gray plus tan on my brush. I'm going to move this so I can get to it. And I also want to make sure that I don't leave any places unpainted. So as I'm coming towards like the hand, I'm going to make sure that this I almost kind of bump into that hand. So again, it doesn't look like I'm painting around the hand. It makes it look like that hair is behind it. We saved the hand for last, so that way when we go to do the hand, we can paint over any awkward spots. I reloaded with gray and tan. I'm going to just make sure that I have a couple of spots over and through here. I might add a little bit more darkness on this side as I finish out the process, but right now just kind of putting a couple of little streaks of it right now, making sure that I've got enough of his beard coming on down here. And again, these bristle brushes are great for hair and just pulling that paint pretty far without overpainting it. I'm going to put some in through here, and again I'm using kind of a curved brush stroke to tell you what direction that hair is working in. And again, we're going to put a little bit lighter, brighter hair in a minute, but this is just getting me my directional brush strokes, letting me know adding that gray tone to it. I'm going to just pull this mustache down a little bit more over that lip a little bit, and then just maybe pull a couple of these gray streaks in this direction, as we want to make sure he's got some good movement in his beard. And that's looking so cute. Picking up more of my gray and my tan, make sure that I've got a little bit of that gray over on this side as well. And again, just adding this additional tone to the hair, because we started with that tannish type of base. Adding this gray on top of it just adds those layers of different strands of hair, and it adds that dimensional element to it. You could even put more brown in it if you felt that you weren't able to see all of your little pieces as much as you wanted to. You could certainly add a bit of brown to it. So what I'm going to do now, he's looking so cute. I'm going to just wipe my brush off. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint, and this is where I'm going to start to just add those little twinkles of highlight. So I didn't wash my brush. I want this right hand side to be a little bit brighter, so I'm going to just kind of the paint underneath is still wet, so I'm allowing for myself to, in essence, kind of blend some of this white into that wetness that was from underneath. And again, just giving myself these long wavy type of strokes to look like he's got some wavy hair, some wavy beard. I don't want to overdo it. I definitely want some lighter stuff established on the part that pops out the most to the viewer. So that would be kind of the curve of the beard, maybe some of these longer mustache pieces. And if you're going through this and it's you know, too white or too gray, adjust it accordingly. So if you're going through this and you want yours to be a little bit, it's turning too white, then just add some of your tan to it. So I just picked up a little bit of my tan to get that light tone in there without it going too white. And that's a great way to just build your way to the brightness. It doesn't all just have to be white. You can really just build your way. If you start too white, you might not see all of the dimensional elements that you worked so hard to put in there. So I a lot of times will just build my way there as opposed to, you know, just going there to start full on from the beginning. So I think I'm on this side, I'm not going to wash my brush, but I'm going to pick up more of my tan. So I'm going to go tan and white on this left hand side so it's not as bright as the right hand side. So this is tan plus white on my brush. And again, I'm just adding another layer so I can give myself a little bit more volume in the beard without, and the mustache, without it going too heavy on me. So this is tan plus white. Just making sure I've got as much on here as I want. And again, let it dry. Once you've got it done, you might find that, you know, you let it dry and it's like, oh, I would love some more in there. Just keep adding until you've got it into the color that you want. Maybe you want your Santa to have a brown beard. You can really make it whatever you would like. Over here on this left hand side, I don't think I'm going to do a whole heck of a lot. Maybe just a little bit more of the tan color, but it's looking pretty good to me. Maybe a little tiny bit of brightness on just the tips of his mustache up and through here, like they're catching a little bit of the light from the light source. And then again, I would let it dry and then see if there's any more fiddling that I want to do. And then I'm going to be using my small brush for the next step. So once you've got your beard and your mustache done, you can put the large brush away. Am I going to use my small brush or my medium brush? I'm actually going to use my medium brush for the next step. So you can put your large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish his hand. I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, gray, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some shadows on the left-hand side of the fingers and the bottom side of this one, and some highlights on the right-hand side to again speak to the light source and to add some form and shape to our fingers. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black and gray on my brush at the same time. So I have a little bit of black and gray, and of course you can use a different brush, whatever brush you feel most comfortable with. As I'm doing this, I know that I want this to look like a glove, so I'm not going for knuckles or anything like that. I'm just going for a material type of surface. So I've got my black and gray, so I'm going over here on the left hand side. I'd have a little bit of a shadow kind of dipping at the bottom of this finger, and then I'm going to bring this up the left hand side of the finger. So black and gray, and again I'm just kind of using a little bit of a dry brush technique. I want it to definitely be darker than whatever it's next to. So I'm coming into this area that I feel I need to go a little bit darker than the shadowy stuff below. So I just picked up a little bit more black paint on my brush, and I'm just kind of blending it out into the right hand side. There can be wrinkles in the glove. There can be, you know, all kinds of fun stuff when it comes to cloth. So the more wrinkles you have, the more it's going to look like it's a little bit, there's a little bit more room in the glove. I'm going to put just a couple, maybe little creases kind of coming down here. I'm going to stick this darker tone down at the bottom of this finger as well. So again, this is just a little bit of black and gray, and then I'm going to do that same color combination on the bottom side of this little finger. In through, I think I need a little bit more black right in through here. Just get it a little bit darker like that. And I'm not necessarily going for gray gloves. I'm just going for white gloves that are kind of in the shadows of whatever, you know, Christmas Eve kind of place Mr. Santa Claus is in at the moment. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of my gray paint in order to get this, my shadowy area, just to make sure it blends in with the mid-tone of that finger. So just, this is the gray paint, making sure that wherever I put that shadow, that it kind of softly blends into the mid-tone. I mean, you could certainly have like a just a line transition as opposed to a soft gradient like I'm doing. But I think, again, these soft gradients, especially when it comes to fabric, makes it look a little bit more natural. And then I'm going to put white paint on my brush to get a nice bright highlight over on the right hand side. I did not wash my brush, I just put white. Oh, I missed this little gradient here. Hold on, putting gray paint back on my brush. Need to get this little thumb over here. So that's gray paint back on my brush in order to get that to blend into that shadowy area. There we go, that works. Now I'm gonna wash and dry my brush and put white paint on my brush. So white paint is going on my brush, and I'm going to establish these real bright edges on a couple of places, in through here, maybe in through here. If this was, say, a knuckle underneath here, maybe this white gets pulled down a little bit. But again, it's really just about kind of giving myself a bright place that is being illuminated from the light source. So I feel like maybe this is kind of the top side of this finger, so I'll put that kind of the brightest. Maybe there's a little knuckle that's pulling a little bit brighter area in through there, and then just making sure that this is all fully executed. So that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this finger in through here. So I feel like maybe we'd have a pretty good bright spot in through here, and then I'll get it, maybe this part to be pretty bright, definitely over here on the right hand side. But the highlight, the brightest of the bright, doesn't have to be just on that far right edge. I'm going to put it kind of in through here to maybe make this part of the finger look like we're seeing part of the flatter side of its surface. But you could, if you just wanted it to be on that right edge, you could certainly do that. And then I'm just going to get it to blend with the gray next to it. So that's looking pretty good, giving me that bright area that's being illuminated, and it kind of softly blends over into this left, into the dark side on the left. And then I'll just put a little bit on this little femme with a touch of white. And again, this is also helping me to make sure that my beard is behind my finger. So there may be areas where, that beard came in front of the finger by accident. So this is definitely a time where you could clean up any of those little edges. And if your fingers grow a little bit in the process, so be it. Just let them grow. Let them, they're not going to grow too much to put them out of proportion. Just, it's more important, I think, to make it look like it's painted in front of that beard as opposed to the beard. I guess you could have a couple pieces of the beard kind of coming in front, but not too many. Anyways, I'm going to use my small brush for the next step. So once you've got your fingers done, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint some glasses on our Santa Claus. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, yellow, black, and white. I think that's all the colors I'm going to use. What I'm going to first do is I'm going to be painting a base coat for my glasses with a custom color. So I have established what my custom color is. It's going to be like a gold color. Let's see if I can show you on my palette here. So this is the color I'm going to be using as my base coat. How I got to that was I used brown, yellow, and just a teeny tiny touch of white paint. Just a teeny tiny touch. And I mixed it together. So whenever I look at gold or brass or anything like that on a metallic basis, I seem to always see yellow and brown in them. So when I mix my yellow and brown, it comes up with this fabulous gold color. So that's what I'm going to use as my base coat for my glasses. What I'm first going to do is find myself I would say a little bit above the nostrils. I'm going to give myself an arcing line going across my nose like this. This is going to be just the start of my glasses. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself the top rim of them. You could really have any glass style that you want. If you wanted yours to be circle, make them circle. I'm going to just have mine kind of almost like reading glasses. So I'm reloading my brush. I'm going to start in here, in this vicinity, in through here. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit, and then over to the right. I'm going to go kind of straight across until I reach a little bit past that eye. So just a little bit past the eye, and I'm going to just dip it down just a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just so I can have them pretty symmetrical. So I'm going to give it a similar curve coming out of here. So like that. That one's a little bit above this part here, or even with it, something like that. It's a little tough to see from the side here. And then I'm just going to kind of bring it across. And if they're not exactly symmetrical, that's okay. It'll just make it look like, you know, maybe they're crooked on Santa's head or something. And we'll just bring this down in through there. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom side. So I'm going to just bring it like this, and I'm going to bring it over in through here. And again, you can have them more curved on one side or less curved. But if you do something on one side, just if you can attempt to mimic it on the opposing side, that'd be great. So something like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. So just pull this down in through here and then come across and give it a similar type of shape. And again, if it's not perfect, we can disguise it with highlights and shadows and all that good stuff and bring it like this. And you could do 2 layers or 1 layer of this base color. I'm just going to do 1 because I know that when I add my little highlights and shadows, it'll work itself out. So I'm going to come down here just a little bit. I'm going to give myself a horizontal line that's about, I'd say, 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. Do the same thing over on this side, and then I'm going to bring it up into underneath my hat. So I'm going to give a little diagonal line in through here. Just bring that down, and again, I'm just from one side to the next, just doing something similar. So I'm going to bring this right in through here, and then just bring this down to this corner in through here. I'm going to put a little kind of bumpy area for the little screw in the glasses. So I'm just going to put a little bump in there. I'll put a little bump over on this side. I'm going to let this dry for a second. While that's drying, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a little shadow underneath the rim of the glasses, or frame of the glasses. There we go. So I just picked up a little bit of brown paint. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow on Santa's nose, right in through here. Just a little curve coming down like this. That's going to make it look like the glasses are casting a little bit of a shadow on Santa's nose. Just bringing this over in this direction. I picked up a little bit of water on my brush just so I can spread the paint out and give myself a nice gradient. I'm picking up now a tiny touch of black and brown to give this little shadow in through here, just a little bit more darkness. You don't have to go as dark as I'm going in through here. I just think it might add a little bit more to the illusion that I'm looking to create. Just a little bit darker right in through here, especially since my light source is over there. And again, I just keep picking up a tiny bit of water on my brush just to get this to spread out a little bit. And you could even, as the glasses kind of come away from the face, you could pull this shadow out just a little bit. But if you do that, I'm going to just make sure I pull it as far as it would make sense to be pulled out. So if I put a little bit of shadow there, I've got to carry that shadow on the face. So I'm just bringing a little bit in through here, and then what this arm of the glasses would cast a little bit of a shadow as well. So that looks pretty good. So now that I've got that, maybe I put a little bit over on this side as well. So again, just a little bit of black and brown to put a tiny bit of a shadow underneath here. And again, I just keep on picking up a little bit of water on my brush to allow myself to give this little bit of a transparent type of appearance to my shadow, and that's looking good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tiny bit more black paint on my brush. I'm going to put some shadows on my glasses, and I'm going to put a little bit of black detail on the arm of my glasses. So I just picked up a little bit of black paint, and I'm going to put I'm going to have the arm being a little have kind of like a black look to it, coming down, I would say about halfway down, and then I'm going to just, like, there's a decoration of sorts. There's going to put a little blackness there. I'm going to do the same thing over on this arm. Plus, it helps to, so you can see the arm on top of the hair. So that was probably why I did it in the first place, because I couldn't see it. So I decided to just put some decorative black rim on there. Now I'm going to put some shadows on my glasses. So again, just black paint with a little bit of water. I'm going to put little shadows in this little mechanism and through here. I'm going to put little shadow at the bottom side of the rim there, putting tiny little shadows at the bottom of some of these pieces, so maybe a little bit in through here, and adding these little details of shadows and highlights on something like this will help, again, to elevate it, but to also kind of clean up edges and things of that nature. I might put a little nose guard in there too in a second. I just picked up a little bit more black to put a little shadow underneath here, and this is making it look nice and 3D, little shadows in the little mechanisms in through here. I'm going to pick back up that gold color. I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm going to pick back up the gold color to put a couple of little nose guards or bumpers in through here. Again, just kind of going for a nice fun illusion here. Let's give him something that's going to protect his cute little nose, something like that. I'm going to pick back up the black. I wanted to do that before I forgot about it. I'm going to put a little bit of black on the bottom side of the frame in through here. A little bit of black underneath these new little bumpers I just put in through there. A little bit black in this one, in through here. Now I'm going to, is that all I want for the black? I think so. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I'm going to put a second layer on my rims with gold and white. So gold and white is going to give me some nice highlights going on my frames, my rims. I think they're called frames. Something like this. And I like to, when I'm doing a highlight of this sort or trying to make shiny materials like this, I really just kind of streak. I get my highlight colors on my brush, which is my gold and white, and I just kind of like to streak it. That way, I'm not, I feel like it looks more natural when you're going for kind of a shiny object as this, as opposed to always putting it consistently at the same brightness all over the place. I feel like when I streak it in like this, in kind of a inconsistent way, it makes it look a little bit more natural, because maybe there's different lights that are shining on the glasses. Maybe they've got, you know, maybe a little bit more on the right hand side or the left hand side. But again, I'm just kind of thinking, well, it's probably towards the top of each one of these pieces. Maybe there's a little bit on this little mechanism, maybe on the arm over here on the little mechanism. But again, I don't need to do every single spot 100%, just giving myself these little twinkles. So once I've got the frames established, now I want to just put some highlights in the actual lens itself. So I'm washing and drying my brush, and this is going to be with a tiny bit of white paint and water. So I have very little bit of white paint on my brush, and I dipped my brush in my water as well, and then tapped it off on my paper towel. So this way I have a lot of moisture in my bristles and a little bit of white paint. So I can use this and give myself a little highlight or reflection on my glass. And I can always add more white paint, like I just added a little bit more in through there. I want to make sure that I can see the illusion that I'm trying to create. So I might have to do it a couple of times, but I'd rather be on the safe side and do it with a little bit of paint first and then have to come back and add more than to try and have to back it off. So this is just a little bit of white paint and water on my brush, and then I would I think I need a little highlights in through here, and then I would I'm going in for gold and white, just for the record. Just a little highlight on these guys. I would let it dry, and if there's any additional little areas that I want to tweak, I certainly would. And then we're going to use this small brush for the next step so you can wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom left on this one. I'm going to be using my small brush and black paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you would like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine, because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a really adorable Santa Claus, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.